Okay, so let's talk straight edged bowl. So, straight edge bowl, you would think that it is a bowl, but in theory, it's sort of a cylinder. So I break everything into bowls and cylinders. So either your inside looks rounded like this, or your inside has a right angle like this. So I believe that right angle is what's going to dictate what the outside of the pot looks like. So to me, something that's round on the bottom, that's a bowl. Something that is more of a mug, in theory, if it's straight this way, should have a right angle. But again, how you open it up is going to dictate what that outside looks like. And to me, a straight edge bowl, sort of those angular, modern, well, depending on what year you're thinking, modern shaped things, that's more of a cylinder, because it's going to have sort of a straight edge on the bottom. What's the difficult part about this? Getting the walls out here without flopping. So let's go ahead and try this. I'm going to go with a little bit of a smaller version than I have in the past. Again, I always start back here to make it compress, and then I'm going to cone up and down. You can refer to some of my other videos for how I cone. Just going to try and get right to the point on this one. I don't watch many YouTube videos. I just don't have the time. It's not that I'm a snob. But one video I watched a long time ago is about coning up and down. The two things that this one artist did, couldn't even tell you his name, was he found that if he coned up and down and did not wire his pots on the wheel, he very rarely got S-cracks. Now, doing those two things doesn't mean that if you're thick and thin on the bottom, it's going to stop you from getting an S-crack. You're always going to get an S-crack or a stress fracture if you're uneven on the edges of your pot and the bottom. But I tend to cone up and down. I also hate to wedge clay. So to me, I'm able to sort of wedge out those air bubbles. Now, you would think that I'm going to make a bowl this wide, that I want this to be super wide, but I don't. I want the bottom of my floor to be about 3 to 4 inches wide. So I'm going to start with my clay sort of tall and narrow. That was funny. Narrow. That's a funny word. All right. And I definitely want a real good foot on this. So I'm going to actually leave an inch. Now, why am I leaving an inch? I'm leaving an inch because I know who I am as a potter. And I know that I am constantly being aggressive down on that floor. So I want to make sure that every time I'm aggressive and wiping that floor, I'm leaving myself enough clay for that foot. So I'd say that's about an inch. And I'm going to try really hard not to get rid of too much of it. Now again, I want to open up, and I don't want to scoop. I want to pull towards me, and then I want to pull out the way I went in. And I'm using my fingertips, so I'm almost scooping. I'm not necessarily using my fingers. If I use my fingers, I might end up with that round shape. So I'm going to go down onto that floor. Don't push down anymore, Melanie. And pull straight towards me and come out the way I went in. Go ahead and show you what I got going on in there. Let me clean it up first. If you were to feel my clay, you'd be like, oh my God, there's so much left on the bottom. Again, I know who I am as a potter. And I know that I constantly scoop from that floor. So you guys can see in there, I've got this right angle. This really super, more of an angle than I do that sloping scoop that would yell bowl. All right, now, here's the trick to creating this type of pot. We want the bottoms of the walls to be much thinner than the top. So we want it to be sort of thinner on the bottom and start to get thicker on the top, because we're going to be building up. And then when we get those walls up, I'm going to do this whole heat gun, dry it up a little. Then I'm going to stretch it out. This wall that's here is going to end up all the way over here. Therefore, it has to stretch. If we start with a wall over here that's 1/4 of an inch thin, it's going to stretch out to 1/16 of an inch, and then it's never going to stay round. So we're going to start down on the bottom. In my last video, I talked about how I keep my foot on the pedal. I keep my foot on the pedal because there are times when I slow down my wheel and times that I speed them up. It's not something I consciously do. I just have noticed that when I'm trying to scoop from the bottom, I tend to slow down. And then now when I start to pull, I will speed up. So a lot of people may take their foot off of the wheel, off of the pedal. I don't agree with that. If you can't control the pedal and you're afraid you're just going to keep on going too fast or too slow, then really try and fix that fault that you have, because it's super important to have control at all times. So you might have noticed at least twice I've gone and wiped the floor of my pot. Again, that's why I left so much. And again, I'm going thicker on the top. And although I'm making a bowl, do you see what's going on here? I've got this cylinder going. And what are those lines? Those are my cuticles. So for this purpose, I'm glad you get to see them, because then you get to see that it's going straight up and down. I'm gonna start down here again, slow down, and now I'm gonna consciously get thinner on the bottom, and I'm gonna loosen up as I get to the top. Now with three pounds of clay, 2.5 pounds of clay, you would think I'd be able to get a much taller wall, but the wider your pot, the shorter it's gonna be. So as I start to pull out those walls to be sort of that angle that I'm aiming for, I'm going to be using more clay. So the same is the converse. If you have a really wide bottom, you're going to need a lot more clay to get it taller. Here's a quick little example, because I always have random stuff everywhere. Because the bottom of this is so wide, I needed to add a little bit more clay to get this height. If this would have been just a narrow cylinder, this would have probably been about this tall. So don't underestimate how much clay you need for the floor or for the wide opening when you are weighing out your clay. Okay, so now my walls are pretty evenly, consistently thick. Maybe a little thin there, and I'm gonna go ahead and just sort of stop right there. I'm gonna reinforce that right angle that I had inside. Maybe even push this up a little bit. I'll show you guys what's going on the inside. So you see it's not necessarily round. It's got a little bit of an angle. I did that carefully because, again, the weight of me moving it around. See how now it's a little wonky? So I'm gonna go in and do what I call the corrective pull. Just keep my hands as still as possible to sort of recenter that clay. Now I'm going to stop, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to heat gun this, so stay tuned. You have your own studio and you use a heat gun. There's a beautiful design of the heat gun. Look at this. Oh, see what that does? That stops this from melting the cord or the ground or the wheel or the plastic or you. So look at that brilliant design. Little PSA for you. All right, let's go back. So my clay is tacky. It's still movable, but it's not, flimsy. It's not like when I first started. Now I've got this wonderful tool here. I use this right here. It is my, hold on one second. Bought myself another one recently. I went to the ceramic shop in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. And boy, what a nice place. I'm a big fan. Super customer service. So I bought myself a smaller version of this. I found that this one was a little too big for the smaller pots. So I go and I get myself this Mud Tools black rib. It's super hard. Now I'm going to use this to draw my pot. And what I mean is I'm going to make this end up where I want that wall to be. So it's sort of the guide or the mold. Now what a lot of people tend to pay attention to is the outside of their bowl and how straight it is. That's a mistake. You're going to be able to trim the outside. What I care about is what's going on the inside. So I'm not going to start on the bottom because then I'm going to end up with a bit of a rounded inside. And that's not what I want. I'm aiming for a straight inside. And the outside can easily be trimmed just a bit or enough to give me that straight look, let's start over here. Okay, so with my wheel going not super slow and my tool wet, I'm gonna aim this a little above, sort of where I want that foot to start. And I'm gonna be gradual about it. I want to brace my elbow down on my body. My finger goes in the hole. I'm even holding it a little lower. I'm gonna start right here, and I'm gonna take my first run. And with every revolution, I'm pushing the wall up against that tool. So I'm not dragging the tool up against the pot. What's really important is to kind of push forward a little up here, otherwise this will easily go out like that. So you see how I started to insinuate where I wanted to be. I did take off just a little bit of clay, and I'm gonna wet that again. Now I'm gonna go for a second run. I'll start right there again, and now I'm at a little bit more of an angle, and I'm gonna push in with my finger on the inside. I have my sponge in my hand just to sort of lubricate a little bit. Push that tool forward and compress that lip. Okay, and I'm gonna, now how far can you stretch this? Well, there I am cleaning the bottom again. You know, I don't know. It's really gonna be up to you how fearful or afraid you are, or how much clay you've left. I left a good sort of 1/2 inch up on the top. You want to make sure that when you come off, you come all the way off. Don't just pull out like that, because when you just pull off like this, you may not get that last full revolution up on the top. You're going to see that that straight edge that I had as a lip is now starting to angle down. I kind of prefer that. I love when the glaze sits on that right angle. Okay, let's see if we can get one more run at this. Wetting everything, holding it, getting my head all the way down here, going a little bit more of an angle, pushing up against that tool. Hand as still as possible. Push forward up on the top so that it doesn't round out and come off. So in theory, scientifically, this shouldn't work, right? Because it's kind of defying gravity on the outside. But that heat gun that I did, that was super important. I've got a little bit of a bump on the inside. I'm just gonna push it, because although now it's sort of round on the bottom, that's the part that I can trim. Again, I don't want the inside to sort of be rounded. I want the outside to be straight. I want everything to be straight. I went in with one hand, that was a mistake. I'm gonna go try and correct it, hoping I can, because I am on video, and it would be a waste if I couldn't. So I'm a little off. Little things that you don't pay attention to. All good. Again, your pot's not moving while it... Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the inside, as I constantly keep doing. Okay, so there, I've got sort of that straight edge bowl. I think it's straight, looks straight to me, a little bit of a wobble. Straighten that out. And then I know that I have enough clay down there to get my foot, and I'm gonna take a little bit off just so that I can get it off the wheel. I've got a little bit of the ledge where I had that tool sitting, but that's okay, because we could fix that. Peel that chacha inside here. And there we go. We've got sort of this very straight edge stretch bowl. My wall should be evenly consistent because I left the top thicker than I left the bottom. So the bottom sort of just stretched a little, but then the top started to get thinner. So hopefully I'll show you guys a video of how I trim this, and go for it. Remember that heat gun thing, it'll stop you from melting a whole bunch of shit. See ya.